So, at this stage of the story, what we see after Joseph, right, is a partial fulfillment of the promise to Abraham. Because what we see is masses of Israelites living in Egypt. And we remember that God promised Abraham that he would have many descendants. So we start to see a partial fulfillment of this in Egypt. But we've got a problem here, because we can see these are God's people, they're the descendants of Abraham, but they're not living in God's place. They're living in a pagan land, Egypt, and that's a problem. And we've got no indication of them living under God's rule, really. So, this brings us to the next part of our story, which is Moses and the Exodus. So, with the Exodus, God reveals himself to Moses and then to tell the Israelites that his name is Yahweh. That's his personal name, like my personal name is Duncan. And it means I am that I am, or I am who I am. And you could say that this is him saying, you can count on me to be God. You can count on me to be who I am. Now, some people you can't depend on. You don't know if they're really going to act true to who they're supposed to be. With God, you can. He's always going to be reliable. And this name Yahweh is his covenantal name. It's the name that's used a lot of the time to remind us of the covenant that he's made with his people, the obligation that he's made to his people. So God uses Moses to bring the Israelites out of Egypt. You're all familiar with this story. And it's worth reading this. Exodus 6 verse 6. He says, therefore tell the Israelites, I am the Lord. And when Lord there is written in capital letters, that means that the Hebrew word there is Yahweh. And the translators have put it as capital L-O-R-D to help you see that. I am the Lord. I will bring you out from your enslavement to the Egyptians. I will rescue you from the hard labour they impose, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. And notice this bit. I will take you to myself for a people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from your enslavement to the Egyptians. Now, looking at those verses, you can see the idea again of God's people in God's place under God's rule. So God is going to make these guys his people, and he's going to bring them out of this bad place, Egypt, because he needs to bring them into a new place so that they can be God's people, and then because he's going to be their God, they're going to be living under his rule. But notice that this isn't because of anything good they've done. It's not that the Israelites were good people and God said, yeah, they're so good, I want to save them. Which is how people think these days. A lot of people think God saves people who are good. But that's not the case, because Deuteronomy 7:7 says, it is not because you were more numerous than all the other peoples that the Lord favoured and chose you. For in fact you were the least numerous of all peoples. So in other words, you guys weren't that special. You're actually insignificant compared to other people. But then verse 8, rather it is because of his love for you and his faithfulness to the promise, he solemnly vowed to your ancestors that the Lord brought you out with great power, redeeming you from the place of slavery, from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So it was because of his promise to their ancestors. In other words, because of God's promise to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to Joseph, because of this promise, God's saving the Israelites. So he's only saving them because he'd already chosen to save them before they were even born. And God saves them, you probably remember, through the Passover, when the angel of death passes over the land and kills the firstborn of each family, unless people have painted the lamb's blood on their doorposts. And that clearly points to Jesus Christ's blood. Jesus Christ in the New Testament is talked of the lamb, and his blood is what saves us from judgment from God the Father. And also saves them through the crossing of the Red Sea. And an interesting thing about the waters there, chaotic waters, which is what we see in the flood, and we also see in the creation story. And we see God always overcoming water. And I was reading a psalm the other day, very encouraging, might have been Psalm 30, around about there, where it says, God is the Lord of the flood. It's like he is Lord over the flood, like he's in control of all the chaos in life. And so you've got Pharaoh, who's claimed the Israelites as his own, but God has claimed the Israelites of his own. He said, it's my firstborn child. And they have a face-off, God and Pharaoh, and God obviously wins. and he destroys the Israelites' enemies, and he brings them out of slavery, out of Egypt. But notice that God still had another place to bring them to. So when he brings them out of Egypt and through the Red Sea, they're still not in the promised land. He saved them from their slavery, but they've still got a promised land to go into still. And so this points to Christ's victory at the cross, because Christ dealt with our sin by his blood, which is what the blood of the Passover lamb symbolises. And Jesus defeated Satan at the cross, which is what the offspring was promised would do in Genesis 3:15, crush his head. But even though Jesus has done this for us, and he's done the victory at the cross 2,000 years ago, we still haven't entered the promised land yet. We're still waiting for that. And that's something that characterises people who put their trust in God all the way through the Bible meta-narrative. It's that we're still putting our faith in God, trusting that the promised land is yet to come. And life is hard.